there is a big debate in India today on the question of public spending. Increasingly, various governments are resorting to welfare schemes, the multiple welfare schemes, and especially the South Indian states today dominate in welfare schemes. So there's a big debate in India. Should welfare schemes continue like this? We call them populist schemes. We call them as softs to the people. And in several state governments, they simply transfer the money to the citizens, direct cash transfers. Is this method of providing subsidies, providing softs, offering welfare schemes, is a right approach of governance? Will it not impact the long-term development of the country? Will it not adversely affect public expenditure for long-term economic development of the country? So this is the debate in one of the very important issues of concern in India's model of governance. So what should be done? What should be the relationship between welfare and development in any coherent governance strategy? What should be the relationship between development and welfare? So we have several welfare schemes like the PM Kisan at the All India level, Raitu Bandhu in Telangana, YSR Bharosa in Andhra, and there are a number of schemes in Andhra Pradesh like Jagananna Divana, Amma Divana. There are several different names. Ultimately, it is a process of state providing softs, providing relief in cash and kind to the people. So the question today is this the right model of governance? Is it that now the Telangana government has introduced a scheme of directly transferring 10 lakh rupees into the accounts of selected Dalit families. So Chief Minister K. Chandrasekhar Rao said he'll spend 1 lakh crores on Dalit Bandhu, providing 10 lakh rupees of direct cash grant to each Dalit family. So there is no indication of these welfare schemes getting with there's no the indication is very clear. Every year the new welfare schemes are coming. Political parties are actually thinking in a very creative way to introduce newer and newer welfare schemes. We have seen in Tamil Nadu, governments offering laptops, government offering all kinds of things, television sets to the people. So the concern of the economists, this model of governance will have a negative impact on the economy. Should they be allowed to continue, or should there be some kind of a regulation on these schemes? Because there seems to be no end to these schemes. Will the finances of governments support funding these schemes over a longer period of time? So in this today's lecture, let's look at this dilemma between welfare and governance, welfare and development as a model of governance. To what extent there should be focus on welfare, and to what extent there should be focus on development. So the development and welfare should go hand in hand. In any developing country, when there is humongous inequalities, there's a massive inequalities in India. Indian economy and Indian society witnesses rampant inequalities. And in the age of high growth economy, when India is growing faster, the inequalities are actually widening. So the studies, there is a book written by former Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission, Montek Singh Ahluwalia. So in this book, he has explained that the inequalities have actually widened in the era of high economic growth in India. There are inter-regional inequalities, interstate inequalities. There are inequalities between men and women, rural and urban. So this kind of inequalities, even the recent reports have indicated that how big business houses like Ambani, Adani, and other big billionaires have amassed massive wealth. Increasingly, number of Indians in the global billionaires club is increasing. On the other hand, we find unemployment, underemployment, job cuts, wage cuts, layoffs, retrenchments, people losing jobs, especially the women losing jobs because the labor force participation rates of women are significantly come down. So this is the age characterized by tremendous inequalities. On one side, there are islands of prosperity in India. There's the ocean of underdevelopment, deprivation, poverty, unemployment, underemployment, and various forms of human suffering. So the first point is, in such a situation where there are rampant inequalities, obviously the governments have to support the weak. So democratic governments have a constitutional mandate to support the weakest in the society. So what is the role of a democratic government? Democratic government should work for redistribution of income and wealth. If we look at the directive principles of state policy in the Constitution of India, it clearly envisages equal distribution of wealth, incomes, and assets. But quite contrary to the constitutional vision, asset inequalities are increasing, income inequalities are increasing. Look at the employment pattern. Those who are very intelligent, highly skilled, have enormous employment opportunities. Look at the campus placements in India's top education institutions, IITs, IIMs, even SRM. And look at the ordinary engineering colleges, ordinary degree colleges, where students struggle to find any placement. So given this kind of a situation, what should be the governance philosophy? Can government leave it to the market? Can governments leave it to the course of economic development? Should governments not intervene to help the weak, to help the disempowered, to help the disadvantaged? So that is the basic essence of governance. So the governance should have a human face. Governance cannot have only commercial consideration. So when we have human face to governance, obviously the government should have schemes to benefit the vulnerable, should facilitate, should provide a helping hand to the weakest in the society. So that is the essence of this welfare state. So the Constitution of India envisages India to be a welfare state where government plays an active role in providing relief to the people. In a true free market economics, government's role is limited. In economics, there are two schools of thought. One school of thought is government should not be there in the economy at all. Government should have no role to play. The state has very limited or no role to play in the lives of the people. Everything should be left to the market forces. Let the market forces decide education, health, drinking water, sanitation, everything. Let it be allowed to let the free market allow to do its work. But the other school of governance says that's not possible in a developing society. Why developing society? During the pandemic, we have seen even Trump and Biden administration giving cash checks to the people. In fact, the United States, UK, several other advanced nations have distributed money to the people more than what India has done. In fact, our package, relief package, is more in terms of loans, is more in terms of credit facility. Whereas in America, in UK, the focus was more on direct cash transfer to the people. Well, even a country like United States, which doesn't believe in a welfare state as such, it believes in a free market society. So everything is given to the private sector. At least in the European countries, government play an important role in providing education and health. Whereas in a country like United States, even education and health are also totally privatized. But still, American government came forward to help the people hit by the pandemic, and much more than what we could do in India. So therefore, the first point is, in a society riddled with rampant inequalities, in a society marked by humongous inequality, very wide inequality, such welfare schemes are inevitable to help the poor, to help the marginalized, to help the vulnerable. So this is the first argument in favor of the welfare schemes. The second argument in favor of the welfare schemes is, well, all these schemes cannot be categorized as a similar schemes. Certain schemes have benefits beyond an individual. For example, we have a midday meal scheme. So should we call it a welfare scheme or a development scheme? Recently, it has been revamped and renamed as PM Poshan. It has been revamped and renamed as PM Poshan. So these welfare schemes are essentially, whether such schemes like midday meal scheme should be called a welfare scheme or should they be called as a development scheme? Well, if you look at from on the surface, it looks like a welfare scheme. Well, government supplies cooked meal during in cooked noon meal scheme, providing the children studying in the government schools. But what is the result of that? It has led to several social outcomes like improved levels of nutrition, declining dropouts, improved school attendance, better learning outcomes, because a child who is hungry cannot understand the complex subjects like mathematics and science. In fact, the new education policy talks about providing even breakfast. But unfortunately, the new scheme doesn't talk about it. It hardly needs, nobody knows why the government of India has withdrawn the scheme of providing breakfast in the schools also. But the midday meal scheme is now extended to even pre-primary level. So this is an example. So second example is, well, cash transfer to farmers like PM Kisan, like Raitu Bandhu, like YSR Bharosa, where a cash support is given to the farmer. Should we call it a welfare scheme or should we call it a development scheme? Look at the Indian agriculture. Indian agriculture is become a loss-making proposition. As a result, many farmers are abandoning agriculture. If you look at the census documents, each census reveals that the number of farmers, cultivators in India is actually declining. Number of cultivators in India is actually declining. Why? People are running away from agriculture. The National Sample Survey data reveal that if given an alternate livelihood opportunity, 40% of Indians would like to give up agriculture. Well, the next generation, Gen Next in farmer families, are not coming to agriculture at all. So assuming that more and more people leave agriculture, what will happen? Who should grow food in India? Can a country of India's size rely on food imports? So will it not endanger the food security? So we need to motivate farmers to produce. So how do we motivate farmers to produce food? You make it at least not a loss-making proposition. So therefore, providing cash support to farmers is nothing but incentivizing food production, ensuring food security in the country, which is a larger objective. So should we call this cash support to farmers as a mere welfare scheme? Should we dismiss it as a populist scheme or a scheme that protects agriculture, as a scheme that incentivizes food production, as a scheme that furthers the objective of food security? So that is the another important factor. So I can give you any number of examples. So subsidies to farmers, of fertilizer subsidy to farmers. Quite often there is an argument: why should government give subsidize? Why should government subsidize fertilizers? Well, let the farmers buy the fertilizers at market prices. So fertilizer subsidy, food subsidy, power subsidy are a big burden on the exchequer. It accounts for lakhs of crores. But what happens? We have an experience in India. When the prices of DAP fertilizers, there are two kinds of fertilizers. One, nitrogenous fertilizers like urea. The second type of fertilizer are called DAP fertilizers, which provide nutrients like phosphorus and potassium. Well, any healthy crop growth requires a nutrient mix of NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potash, in a particular ratio. What happened when prices of phosphorus and potash fertilizers increase due to reduction in subsidies? People started using more nitrogen. As a result, there was a huge crop failures and farmer suicides. So the viability of agriculture is at stake. For example, even today, we do not have self-sufficiency in production of pulses and production of oilseeds. So we are importing pulses and oilseeds. in a massive way. India spends lakhs of crores on importing pulses and oilseeds. So we are dependent and vulnerable to the vagaries of international market. So what should be done? So should we not improve the production of pulses and oilseeds so that we become self-sufficient and we don't depend on foreign nations? Because once food security is compromised, national security is also compromised. Because a country that is dependent on others, dependent on foreign powers for its own, to feed its own people, cannot be a country with self-respect. Cannot be a country that can live with self-respect. So obviously, we try to incentivize pulses production. We try to incentivize oilseed production. Recently, Government of India launched a massive scheme of encouraging palm oil by spending 11,000 crores. So therefore, every welfare scheme need not necessarily be construed as a populist scheme aimed at attracting votes. Well, there is a linkage between these welfare schemes and larger goals of social and economic development. For example, some governments have launched schemes like providing free bicycles to girls. It sounds as a populist scheme. It sounds as a scheme that merely aimed at attracting voters. But what is the experience? This has considerably encouraged girls to pursue education. Well, if a girl child is educated, entire family is educated. The experience of Kerala, look at the experience of Kerala. Kerala has achieved better fertility rates even as compared to China, precisely because it has expanded female education. So expansion of female education has led to lowering fertility rates. So this is the yet another advantage. So when you educate girls, well, the women will play a productive role in the economy. Women, an educated mother can result in better health status, better nutritional status, lower fertility rates. So should we call providing free bicycles to girls a mere welfare scheme? So I give you a number of examples. So several such government welfare schemes have benefits, a larger social and economic benefits, have resulted in a greater socio-economic gains. So therefore, it is wrong to dismiss all welfare schemes, all subsidies, all government support as a wasteful expenditure. Interestingly, government supports industry also in a very big way. Government supports business also in a very big way through tax incentives, through several schemes. But unfortunately, in our country, we have a problem of language. If you give it to the poor man, we call it a subsidy. If the government gives to a rich man, it is called incentive. Both words do not send the same signal. Both words do not evoke a similar response. When you say subsidy, you feel it as a drag on the economy. But when you say incentive, you feel it is a necessity. So the choice of words determine the kind of response it evokes. Similarly, if a loan is waived, we call it, if it is for farmer, we call it a loan waiver. but for the industrialists, we call it write-off. Well, writing off loans may not exactly be the waiver of loans. There is a fundamental technical difference. So still, the person who has taken the loan has to pay. They will only be removed from the bank books. But still, the reality is most of the written off loans will never be repaid. Suppose if it is for farmers, we call it rescheduling of loans. But if it is for the corporate, we call it corporate debt restructuring, CDR. So therefore, government does not support only the poor, only the weak, only the marginalized. Government even supports business houses, industrial houses in a very big way. That is not considered as a waste or a drag on the economy. Only when government supports the poor, several pro-corporate economists argue it as a burden on the economy. So therefore, to summarize the discussion, all welfare schemes are not bad. Many such schemes have positive externalities. Positive externalities mean they have a larger social and economic benefits. So that is the difference between a welfare scheme. But the problem here is, well, there should be a balance between government spending on welfare schemes and government spending on developmental schemes. Ultimately, the resources are limited. You can't have both egg and omelette. So you have to sacrifice something to get something else. So if a government spends its entire resources on the welfare schemes, then where will be the money to create infrastructure? Where will be the money to provide education to children? Where will be the money to provide health care? Where will be the money to construct housing for the poor? Where will be the money for laying roads, constructing irrigation projects, creating industrial parks so that you get employment? So there should be balance. So there should be a balance between welfareism and development. So it's a prerogative of the government. Well, another problem with these welfare schemes, once you begin, nobody can withdraw them. You can't even revise them. In Tamil Nadu, the cheap rice schemes were first introduced way back during Annadurai time. So in United Andhra Pradesh, N.T. Ramarao started this rupees 2 a kg rice scheme. So even after 4 decades, the cost of the price rice in the open market has substantially increased. It has increased manifold, but the subsidized rice scheme still remains. So in the 40 years, have the people of United Andhra Pradesh and Telangana not become economically strong enough to afford their own food? Well, we still have a large number of white ration cards. We still depend on cheap rice schemes. So the problem here is, in a democracy, once you start a scheme, it is easy to start a scheme. It is extremely difficult to roll back it or amend it or change it. It's a very difficult thing. I have seen people who have lakhs of income. I have seen people who have the children in the United States applying for social pensions, old age pensions, widow pensions, where government pays 2,000 per month. So the problem with these welfare schemes is a huge pilferage, leakage. Many ineligible people will avail these schemes. Look at, quite often we find the data where the number of white ration cards will be more than the population also. Every time during elections, governments liberally hand out liberally give ration cards. And after the election, they pruned them. So in an electoral democracy, which is dependent on votes, numbers in the legislature, no government, no political party can afford to roll back these schemes once they begin. We have seen several such schemes, fee reimbursement scheme. How did it begin, fee reimbursement? Well, supporting meritorious students who are not financially empowered enough to study is a right approach. Suppose a child is very intelligent, gets a seat in IIT, gets a seat in good engineering college, but unfortunately doesn't have the fiscal resources. The family cannot sustain the spending for his or her education. Well, governments can step in and support the child so that the meritorious child will not be deprived of educational opportunities. But what has the fee reimbursement scheme done? Every Tom, Dick, and Harry, somebody can't even pass intermediate, is now studying engineering. And as a result, we have created a large army of unemployed engineering graduates. So using state resources. The taxpayers' money is spent to create an army of unemployed, frustrated engineering graduates. So is this a right approach? So the problem is, how do we regulate these schemes? How do we ensure that these schemes really reach the most deserving people? How do we ensure that these schemes result in positive outcomes, positive developmental outcomes? How do we balance between the need to support the poor, need to empower the disempowered, and need to ensure larger economic development? So this is the dilemma in governance today. In an electoral democracy, governance is often defined by populism. Ultimately, you need to be popular. So you can't afford to be unpopular. So that is a big challenge today. Well, in a dictatorial nation, it can happen. But in a democracy, that too, we have a large pool of illiterate people. So that it is extremely difficult to ensure a balance. There is a competitive political populism. If one political party says, I'll give it 10 rupees, another political party says, I'll give it 5 rupees. Some other political party comes and says, I'll give free of cost. Another party comes, I'll give free of cost, and also in turn, I'll give 5 rupees more. So there is no limit. If a particular party says, I will give free power to those who consume 200 units, well, that is reasonable because the poor will have access to electricity. But another party says, I'll give you 500 units free. So what is the rationale? Rationale is only getting votes. So who should decide that there should be a limit on the welfare scheme? Whether up to 200 units, fine, it will help the poor to have free access, equitable access to energy, to power. But it can't be acceptable that someone who has 1,000 unit consumption will also get a free power. Today we look at the Raitu Bandhu scheme. So all farmers are given Raitu Bandhu. Somebody who has 50 acres, farmhouses, 100 acres, they are also availing Raitu Bandhu. Is it justifiable? Is it justifiable to give schemes to those who do not deserve it? That is the fundamental question. But who has to enforce? In electoral democracy, political parties only see the votes. They don't believe in anything else. They don't rely on anything else. So there should be a larger debate in the country on what should be the model of governance in terms of balancing welfareism, constitutionally mandated welfare state, and a larger role of the state to ensure economic growth, development on a long-term basis.